Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Middle Game episode with Coach B from MasterChess.com. This is the beginning of the Middle Game series focusing on passed pawns. In this series, you will learn how to create a passed pawn, understanding pawn majorities, identify if a passed pawn should be used as a static advantage or be used dynamically as a game winner. You will also learn how to play against the passed pawn, creating an effective blockade that will put the opponent at a disadvantage having a passed pawn. We will also learn how to identify if a blockade can be effective or when that blockade can crumble down. And also, we will talk about how to simplify a complex position into a favorable endgame position with the passed pawn, learning from the games of some of the greatest chess players of all time. So let's get started. In this first video, we're going to talk about how to create a passed pawn. Now, the most common way for a passed pawn to be created is from a pawn majority. If we look on the left side of the board, we could see that black has a pawn majority with 4 pawns fighting against 3. If we look on the right side of the board, we could see that white has a pawn majority with 2 versus 1. Now, not all pawn majorities are the same. If we look at white's pawn structure, his pawn structure is healthy. However, black's pawn structure is crippled due to the double dot pawns. So here, white has a great advantage. And also, having the move, he's totally winning. The easiest way to win this game is simplifying this complex position into a simpler winning pawn endgame. If you watch my pawn endgame series, you might remember the fox and the chicken type of game. With white to move here, this is going to be easily achieved. So the correct response is rook takes on f7. After this, black is forced to exchange. Coming back, if he tries something like queen to d4 check, this actually doesn't work because white can simply retreat this rook and now he's up a rook. So coming back, black has to respond with rook takes on f7. After this, white captures back, rook takes f7. After king takes f7, an excellent move, queen to c4 check. Here, black is forced to exchange the queens, and after queen takes c4 and d takes c4, white is totally winning. Even though black has a pawn majority on the left side with 4 versus 3, due to the double pawns, he's not going to be able to create a passed pawn. However, white has a healthy 2 versus 1 pawn majority on the right side, where he will be able to create a passed pawn, creating a fox and a chicken type of endgame. After this, black's best response is king to f6. Coming back, moving the pawn to c6 and trying to go for a passed pawn, it's not going to work. After something like king to f2 and pawn to b5, here white can simply play pawn to b3. And no matter what black does here, he's not going to be able to create a passed pawn. After something like king to f6, king to e3. If black takes on c4, let's say b takes c4, after b takes c4, the left side is frozen. And after something like king to e5, white can simply march the pawn to g3, regaining the opposition and going for the creation of a passed pawn on the right side. So coming back, king to f6 here was played. After this, white responds with king to f2. After king to e5, king to e3, taking the opposition and not letting the black king pass into the white's territory. After something like king to f5, pawn to g4 check. After king to g5, king to f3. And now the only two possible plays that black has is moving the king to h4, going after the backward pawn on h3, or coming back, moving the pawn to c6, trying to get some counterplay on the queen side. If this option is chosen, white will respond with king to g3. After king to f6, king to f4, regaining the opposition. Black can try pawn to g5 check, king to g3, retreating. After king to e5, pawn to h4, going for the creation of a passed pawn. If the black king is trying to go after white's pawns, he's not going to be able to make it. And we could count, it's going to take black 1, 2 moves to take the pawn on c4, 3, 4 moves to take the pawn on b2, and another 4 moves with the pawn, 5, 6, 7, 8. While white can simply push the pawn to h5, and in 1, 2, 3, 4 moves, he's going to have a queen. Therefore, black is not going to succeed. After king to d4, white will simply push the pawn to h5. King takes c4, pawn to h6, king to b3, pawn to h7, king takes b2. White already has a queen with check, and he's totally winning. So coming back to this position, we looked at pushing the pawn to c6. Black's best response is moving the king to h4, trying to go for the passed pawn on h3. Well, after this, white can respond with king to g2, defending the pawn and pushing the black king back. Coming back, I do want to mention that here would be a terrible mistake for white to move the king to f4, going after black's pawn on g7, because white will actually lose here. Even if we just do a simple count here, we will see that it's going to take more moves for white to win black's pawn to promote his first pawn than it will take black. For example, it's going to take him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to take black's pawn, move away 9, pawn push 10, 11, 12, 13 moves to queen. For black, it's going to take him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to take white's pawn, and then pawn push 9, 10, 11, 12. And we could see that black here is going to be able to queen before white. If you haven't watched my game on counting, I encourage you to do that. And actually, I want to go through one of the possible continuations, and I'm just going to fast forward through the moves. After king takes on g7, black is going to go after white's pawns, and he's going to be able to win this game. After this, black here will respond with an excellent move, king to b4, totally winning this game. White will have to retreat, black will take white's pawns, and then he's going to be able to simply march forward his pawn and win this game. So coming back, after king to h4, the correct response is king to g2. After pawn to c6, king to h2. Here, white can move endlessly between the squares h2 and g2 until black runs out of all his pawn moves. And then his king will have to leave h4, allowing white to start marching with the pawn majority after king to g3. So after something like g6, king to g2, king to g5, king to g3, gaining the opposition and getting ready to march with the pawns. After something like king to f6, pawn to h4, white is ready to march. King to g7, king to f4, king to f6, h5. And I want to stress out, whenever you have a pawn majority, in order to create a passed pawn, you always want to march the pawn on the open file. So pawn to h5 is the correct move. If black takes the pawn with pawn takes on h5, then white simply captures back. And now we have a fox and a chicken type of endgame where white is totally winning. After king retreats to g7, king to g5. And slowly pushing the black king back, here white can even let that pawn go and go capture black's pawns and be able to promote with one of the pawns on the queen side. Coming back, if here black doesn't take the pawn on h5, but moves the pawn forward to g5, checking the white king, white will respond with king to e4. Now, having a protected passed pawn, the black king is stuck on the right side defending those pawns, while white is going to be able to freely move after black's pawns. After king to e6, gaining the opposition, trying to block the white king going towards the pawns on the queen side, white can simply march the pawn on the h file. After h6, the black king is forced to come after the pawn on the h file as it's going to promote in two moves. So after king to f6, white will march the pawn to h7. After king to g7, now white can penetrate into black's camp. King to f5. After black captures on h7, white can capture the pawn on g5, having a passed pawn on the g file, and also a fox and the chicken type of endgame. If black responds with king to g7, king to f5, king to f7, maintaining the opposition, pawn to g5. After king to g7, pawn to g6. King to g8, retreating. Here, probably the easiest way to win is just going after the pawns on the queen side and letting the pawn on the g file go. So after king to e6, I'm just going to fast forward through the moves. And you will see how white will be able to capture all black's pawn, marching the pawn to b4. He's going to be able to promote one of those pawns and winning the game. Coming back after king to g8, I do want to mention that probably the fastest way to win is moving the king to f6. After king to f8, pawn to g7, king to g8, king to g6. And now black has no more king moves. He's going to be forced to move his pawns up. After b5, a takes b5, c takes b5, c takes b5, pawn to c4, white will simply march the pawn, queening first with checkmate. And that's a wonderful way to win this game. And this concludes the lesson for today. I encourage you to stay tuned for the next lesson, where we're going to take a look at a wonderful game between Spassky and Aronson, played in Moscow in 1957, where we're going to see these main topics of pawn majorities and passed pawns in active play. Thank you and have a great day.